All right, so there's some things that I agree with, some things that I don't agree with, and some things that I really don't agree with. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Joe. Hope your workouts are going really well this week, making good progress, and hope you got all your Christmas shopping done. Time is of the essence, as we know. So today, we're gonna react to an Athlean-X video, all right? So Jeff here, he put up a video about a month and a half ago detailing what, according to him anyway, are the worst to best shoulder exercises that you can do, all right? So I'm gonna go over my thoughts on this, but before I do that, let me just briefly mention here, I know who Jeff is, yes, okay? So a lot of you, I'm sure, are gonna come on to this saying, you know, that Jeff has his degree in physical therapy, that he's been a strength coach with Athlean-X. I know all that, okay? But it doesn't change the fact on what I'm going to say, the stuff that I agree with and the stuff that I disagree with, okay? And at the end of the day, remember, none of my videos are ever criticizing a person, never criticizing to begin with, okay? It's never towards the person themselves. I'm reacting towards what they either said or towards a program they wrote, my thoughts on it, all right? It's plain and simple as that. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the video here. Now, Jeff, to begin with, he lists the exercises into 5 categories, which is worst, better, better still, almost best, and then best. I don't agree with this at all. Not where he listed or categorized the exercises, but the fact that he categorized them to begin with. All right, there is no bad exercise. Each exercise has its place. It's just dependent on the individual, how well they respond to it, and whether they have a certain limitation or not. So to start with, let's begin with the worst exercise according to Jeff, which is the upright row, okay? This exercise right here. The consensus with that one is that because you're doing it with internal rotation, it's gonna cause impingement here and a slew of other problems in your shoulder joint. That's not necessarily true. For some people, sure. But it's those who already are susceptible to impingement because of some kind of issue they have in the shoulder joint. Or for me personally, because I have kyphosis, all right, it does lead to impingement here in the shoulder joint. So upright rows for me, for example, probably isn't the best choice unless I really have my exercise or my technique down. But even then, it probably still isn't the best choice. But if you're somebody who's perfectly healthy in the shoulder joint, doing this movement here is not going to lead to really serious issue. It's not. There's no basis or evidence for that. And to make matters worse, Jeff posted this photo in his video right here. And this is not only a ridiculous and misleading photo, but it's highly irresponsible, and it's just not really true, again, depending on the person. And it's just going to lead to fear-mongering among his viewers. All right, so the fact is, if you have healthy shoulders and you have good technique down, the correct technique for the upright row, it's a perfectly viable option for you to do, and it's not going to lead to you being on the operating table. Now, if you want to get your technique right for it, there's a lot of good videos out there for it. Jeff Nippert has one.
The upright row is actually a pretty fantastic exercise if performed properly, because it may be the only multi-joint compound movement that heavily targets the lateral deltoid, not the front deltoid, like a shoulder press or a bench press would.
Mike Isertel over on Renaissance Periodization, he also has a great video on doing the upright row, and both of these guys discuss about the upright row and its risk implications, which is simply that it's fine as long as you're healthy and you're able to get your technique right for it. Dr. Eric Helms also discussed on another Jeff Nippert video that is a perfectly fine exercise for most people.
The upright row, what are your 1 minute thoughts on this? Is it safe?
I get very fatigued by people trying to put exercises into either bad or good or safe or dangerous camps. Our body can move in so many ways, it always has, and what kind of load you use, what range of motion you use, your individual biomechanics should always be considered. There's no such thing as a bad exercise. In the upright row, sure, if you get really, really high, there is a higher impingement risk, but it's also a very low load exercise. I've literally never met anyone who's hurt themselves doing bodybuilding style, good form, upright rows, especially if you do them like I would recommend, like most will recommend, just getting right at about that 90-degree angle.
Yeah.
When you look at your shoulder and just straight up. It's basically the same thing as a lateral raise, just with a different rotation. If you feel pain, don't do it. right?
It makes too much. That makes too much sense.
Bring on the hate comments.
Okay, and there's also research behind this. So Brad Schoenfeld et al. Did some actual research on the upright row, and they published it through the Journal of Strength and Conditioning, through the NSCA, the National Strength and Conditioning Association. And the basic implication with this is that yes, there is some evidence that might suggest that an upright row in fashion can increase your risk for impingement or some other issues, but that is mainly true for those who already are susceptible to impingement, who already have poor health in their shoulders, and for those who don't have the right technique or the right modifications done to the exercise to begin with. Okay, they concluded, the researchers here, that if you make certain modifications to it and you work on your shoulder health, or you have good shoulder health to begin with, it can be a viable option for certain people. It absolutely can. So for Jeff here to say that nobody should ever do it and that it's going to lead to injury is ridiculous, and it's not true. Another exercise here they list that way is the behind the neck presses, okay? Another thing, if you're healthy in the shoulder joint, it can be just fine as long as you do your technique right with it. Now, to go on to some other exercises, I get a bit more agreement with this. So one he puts into the better is the dumbbell cheat laterals, okay? So if you make some modifications to that, it can be a viable exercise. In part true, but one thing I want to mention here is that cheat reps in general don't really need to be done, or really shouldn't be done by anybody, okay? So a few weeks ago, actually about a month or two ago, on this channel, I interviewed Dr. Mike Israetel. And one thing he talked about in is cheat reps, and how there's no real evidence or implications that they're needed or work. Dr. Mike Israetel makes a good point, which is that why not just do another set? Or why not just do a drop set or add in a set of myo reps instead? You know, it's gonna give you a much better stimulus to fatigue ratio. For those who don't know, you want exercises that have a high amount of stimulus to it with a low amount of fatigue to it. Cheat reps, on the other hand, it's more like this or like this, okay? Because yes, with cheat reps, you can increase the load, but you're highly increasing the fatigue as well. So at that point, it almost makes the exercise not necessarily useless, but almost pointless. Okay, so you're much better off keeping with something that's going to give you a higher amount of stimulus to fatigue, which is exactly what you would do if you just added another set or did a drop set or something like that, because you can keep your technique intact while not overloading the exercise. All right, so in this particular case here, all right, it's some agreement with saying dumbbell cheat laterals are better, but at the same time, not really. Dumbbell reverse flies he also mentions as a better exercise. That's a perfectly fine exercise, all right? It's a great exercise that pretty much anybody can do, all right? It's dependent on whether or not you do it with dumbbells or with a machine. Here, he talks about it with dumbbells. In that particular case, yes, it may not be the best exercise, and I agree with him here, but if you do it with a machine, with a reverse fly, all right, then that's a great exercise to do, and a lot of people can and should do that one. If you keep going on to the list, he talks about face pulls as a better still category. Face pulls are great. A lot of people should be doing them, and they are a great exercise. And he talks about, again, as I say, he does talk about how some modifications do need to be made to make it a great exercise. I agree with him there on that. All right, and then, you know, getting on later down onto the list here, now I have a little bit more disagreements. So in the best category, he talks about dumbbell front raises. I know I mentioned earlier that there's no bad exercise out there, and there's nothing bad about this particular exercise. There's just no reason to do it, okay? Because if you already have a good amount of pressing, whether it be horizontal or vertical pressing, that's already getting your anterior shoulder just fine. There's no reason to add in a front raise. There really isn't. So your pressing is already getting this, a lot of it, all right? So if you do bench press, incline press, overhead press, that's getting your anterior shoulder quite a lot, right? And even lateral raises will, to some degree, get your anterior deltoid as well. So there's not really any reason to have it on here. So to even list it as one of the best exercises to do, it's not. So, disagreeing with me there. Cable ladder raises, again, those are great exercises. Real delt rows, okay, those are perfectly fine. So here's the basic consensus with this, okay? Like I said, there's some stuff I agree with, some stuff I don't, some stuff I really don't, all right? There's no reason to categorize exercises like this, okay? It shouldn't be categorized at all. And then to say that certain exercises like the upright row, behind the neck exercises, behind the neck presses shouldn't be done and that they're gonna be really risky for everybody is a ridiculous statement, irresponsible for him to say, and just not true. It's just highly dependent on the individual, okay? So at the end of the day, guys, if you agree with this list, that's fine. And if you follow this advice, okay, then you're gonna be just fine, okay? There's nothing wrong with that at all. But don't shy away from certain exercises that he lists here just because he says that they're horrible, because they're not. All right, that is the basic consensus with this. That is my reaction to Jeff's video here on the worst to best shoulder exercises. So write down below if you agree with what I have to say. If you agree with Jeff, I'd be happy to discuss it with you guys, all right? And if you want to see some more videos like this, right, just let me know. And I hope that you guys found this useful, and I hope you realize that, again, there's no such thing as a bad exercise. It's mainly just dependent on the individual and how they do that exercise to begin with. That sometimes is what the actual limitation or problem is. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video for today, guys, and I will see you next week.